Yes, this is Crystal Edwards, Superintendent. And if you're like me, you've probably watched the news and noticed that COVID-19 cases continue to increase in our community. So, through this video, I want to share with you how LCS monitors and responds to COVID-19 as we make plans and decisions related to our return to learn and return to play activities. One of the first questions I get is, what metrics do you review when you're making decisions about return to learn and return to play? So today I'm going to show you some of those metrics that we look at. And these may change depending upon COVID-19 and how things change. So there are about 10 things that we look at daily, if not multiple times during a day. So the first three metrics are labeled city metrics. These are on the VDH website, and they're specific metrics about Lynchburg City, the community. The next three metrics we call LCS metrics, and these are things that we monitor internally for our own records, and they're not available on a public website. The next three, metrics 7 through 9, are based on space and need. And that we use these metrics to make decisions about bringing kids back to the classroom. And then finally, the last metric is any special circumstances. So I kind of want to take you through how we use this information to make decisions about classes, pods, grade levels, schools, and even the entire division, and whether or not we will return to phase 2, which is remote only learning, or move to phase 4, which is more of a pre-COVID setting. So let me first take you to those city metrics, which I mentioned were on the VDH website. And if you go to the website, which the address is listed above, you will come to a screen like this. And if you scroll down to the right, you will see CDC school metrics. If we click on that, it will take us to this screen, which we can personalize for Lynchburg City Schools simply by scrolling down and finding Lynchburg City. And now let's take a look at the data. So remember, the first three metrics are what we call city metrics. So the first one is the total number of new cases per 100,000 persons within the last 14 days. And as you can see here, for tonight, December 3rd, we are at 495.6 cases here in Lynchburg City. And if you look at what the CDC has outlined as thresholds based on the colors, you can see that this is in a red color because it is above 200. And scrolling back up, red is in the highest risk. So this is one of those 10 measures that we look at. And I will tell you that this particular measure has been red for quite some time, and almost for the entire time that we've been evaluating it since the summer. The second metric is the percent of RT-PCR tests that are positive during the last 14 days. And again, you can see that for Lynchburg City, that is a 9.7%, and it is orange. So going back up to the chart, you can see that that is at the higher risk, but not the highest risk. The third city metric that we use, if you scroll down, is the percent change in new cases during the last 7 days. And of all three city metrics, this is the one that changes most drastically from day to day. So as you can see today, we have seen a decrease in the number of new cases over the last 7 days, of about 21.5%, and that is in the dark green, which is a very good place to be. However, like I said, that metric can change from day to day. So that represents the three metrics that we look at when we talk about the city metrics. Now I'm going to move to the school metrics. If you go to our webpage, one of the first screens you will see is our Return to Learn screen. And if you scroll down, you will see a section that says Daily LCS COVID Update. And as you can see, for today, Thursday, there were 0 cases that were reported, and this is since noon of the previous day. I get a lot of questions that say, I know there was a report today, but it takes us time to actually collect the data and report it. So based on noon of the previous day. And if you click this Count Archive, you get this graph that shows, hopefully it'll show up, there you go. You get this graph that shows how many positive cases, this is staff and students together, that we have had since we began tracking and posting this information in September. And what I'd like you to notice is in September and early October, when we first started in-person learning, we had very few cases. And if you look to the right, you'll see that the number of cases has increased. So again, this is information that we look at daily, and we use this information to help us make decisions about return to learn. So now let's take a look at just those 4 metrics together. And what I have is my daily chart. This is something that I keep on my computer, both at home and at school. And I generally update it twice a day, once early morning and once in the evening as well. But you can see here where I have information for the number of positive cases that were reported on our LCS website. And then I have our 5-day average case. And that 5 days is not 5 consecutive days, it's 5 reporting days. That's why the asterisk is there. I also have the 3 city metrics, total number of cases over 14 days, the PCR positivity rate, and the 7-day change. And if you look where we started this data on November 9th, you can see just by colors which ones were in the red, which is not where you want to be, and which ones are in the dark green, which is where you want to be. And if we track this over the month of November and into early December, and December 3rd, you can see how COVID has changed in LCS over the month of November. There's also a graph that I've put together that shows the number of positive cases on each reporting day. And then as you look at the graph, there's a trend line and a number up top, which is really the average of the 5 previous reporting days. And again, we were averaging about 0.8 cases per day on November 16th, all the way up to a high of 3 cases per day on December 1st and 2nd, and that's come down today to 2.4 cases per day. And again, this is data and information that is reviewed daily. Now, if we come back to this table, we've done the city metric, numbers 1, 2, and 3, and we've talked about the LCS metric, number 4. Metrics 5 and 6 is our percent student absenteeism, and P plus Q is positive cases plus quarantine cases. And what's important to know about this metric is that these do not represent school to school or student to student within school or staff to student within school transfer. These are cases where, for the most part, for what we're seeing from outside activity, a staff member or a student has tested positive. So we count those positive cases even though they didn't occur within the schools. And then, based on our internal contact tracing and working with the VDH, we also count how many people we have to quarantine who may have been exposed due to the positive case. So we do take a look at that data each day, and we look at it differently. You can imagine student absenteeism could be in a class, it could be in a grade level, it could be in a pod, it could be an entire school, or it could be the entire division. The same thing with staff absenteeism. It could be in a pod or a grade level. It could be in a wing of a building. It could be a department like the maintenance department or nutrition or transportation department. So we do look at it through multiple lenses. And then those last three, or 7, 8, and 9, metrics are what we use to determine, can we bring kids back to in-person learning right now? We look at how much space we have available on our buses. We look at how much space is in our classrooms and classes. And we also look at a needs-based priority, with pre-K to 2 being the highest need. That's how we started in-person learning, along with students with disabilities, ELL, and students who are not performing well. And finally, any other special circumstance that may arise that we need to consider rounds out the 10th metric. So what are those blue numbers? What do they mean? Well, I've talked a little bit about the city metrics. The 200 cases, anything above 200 cases puts us in the red. The positivity rate, anything above 10%, puts us in the red. The percent change in the 7-day new cases, anything above 10%, puts us in the red. And then for us, our 5-day average, based on the number of individuals that we predict are in our buildings, and remember, our cohorts are split in half, A and B, so the number of students that are present in the building is split in half, and not all of our students are present or have signed up for in-person learning. So we have a reduced student load, and we may have a reduced staff load in different buildings depending upon staffing issues. So when we look at that based on that reduced load, we're saying over 5 cases per day, or the average of 5 cases, would be in the red for us. That's an LCS metric. And then when we look at absenteeism, depending upon whether or not we're looking at a particular class, a grade, a pod, an entire school, or the division, or a department, when we're talking about staff, we're looking at greater than 30%. So those 6 numerical metrics are very important. And let's take a look at that chart one more time so you can see where we're trending with some of those. So once again, if you look at even December 2nd and December 3rd with just the first 4 metrics, you can see that on December 3rd, which is today, we have 1 light green, which is a good place to be, a red metric, not a great place to be, an orange metric, remember that threshold is 10, not a great place to be, and then of course a dark green, which is a great place to be. What you don't see is the percent student absenteeism and the percent staff absenteeism. And the reason why that data is not public here is because we keep that data by student name and by staff name. So to respect confidentiality, we do not have that data in my public view. So many of you are saying, that's great, we see the metrics, we see the numbers, but we still don't know how that impacts decision. So let me give you a couple scenarios, which are on the bottom here. First of all, if all of those first 6 metrics are above the threshold, if they're in the red, we will return to phase 2 remote only learning. That's if all 6 of them are in the red. And again, let me just take you back to the chart for today. 1 of them is in the red today. The other 3 that you can see are not, and the other 2 are not. I did check that. But all 6 of them would have to be in the red. So then what does that mean if some are? Any other combination or scenario has to be reviewed on a case-by-case basis. And I would liken that to like a snow day. If we get 6 feet of snow, obviously schools close. But if we get a little bit of snow and ice, it might be a delayed opening depending upon the temperature and when it warms up. It may be a closing. It may not even be a problem at all, but we have to look at it on a case-by-case basis. And the same is true here. Those combinations, we have to look at a case-by-case basis. I also get the question as to when will we move to phase 4, which is more of a pre-COVID school that we had before this hit in March. And with our current student schedule, the way that students report to school for a 6-hour day and staff are there for a 7-hour day, if we were to keep that schedule, the first metric that needs to change is the CDC guidance for 6 feet. So we would need something from the CDC that says we no longer have to abide by the 6-foot social distancing, and that shouldn't be considered in schools. Okay, so let's talk about the red zone, what we look at each day. So I talked a little bit about those 6 numerical metrics. And each day we look at all 6 of those and move them above the red line or below the red line. Right now, today, the only one of those 6 that is in the red zone is the 14-day positive case rate. The others, while close to the red zone, are below the line. And I don't want anyone to misunderstand that below the line is completely safe. No, below the line simply means we still examine it on a case-by-case basis. So, for example, during this school year, due to some of the cases that we had positive results for, we did end up having to quarantine a large number of students who were in a class, case-by-case basis. Even though all 6 of these were not above the red zone, those children did resort to phase 2, remote-only learning. So that is probably the best explanation of how we do this each day. So if you want to stay current on the information, one of the first things I suggest you do is stay current with the VDH guidelines. On our website, as I showed you, we have our daily case rate. And then as positive cases are reported to your building supervisors and to our contact tracing team, we do monitor those and make decisions regarding that. Now, the last question I usually get is, how much notice would we have before we went to phase 2 or phase 4? Well, COVID is quite unpredictable, so I cannot guarantee that you would get 3 weeks of notice, because that would mean I'm predicting 3 weeks out what I think conditions will be. But as we start to see more and more things go above the line, above the red line, like you see here, the 14-day positive cases above the red line, the positivity rate is at 9.7, which is very, very close. We are at about 2.4, 2.6 for our 5-day average. As you see more and more things go above the red line, then we have reason to start to consider, do we move back to phase 2? And that will be a group decision. I have a lot of people that work with me to help me make that decision, and it will be communicated to staff, students, and families in a timely manner. I can't guarantee that it'll be 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or 2 days, but we will try to make it as timely as we can given the nature of the data. I will say that if we find ourselves with a high staff absenteeism, I hope you can understand that a decision to go to remote learning might be imminent at that point, and that might be a less than 24-hour notice. So again, we have to take it on a case-by-case basis. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or any of the central administrative team who works on this. We appreciate everything that you do and your patience and understanding as we work together with this unknown pandemic. Thank you and have a good rest of your night.